while this get confusing. People don't know when to start singing. Okay, so I've got that one. We're just going to sing a little bit before the service starts. If you want to sing along, you can come ahead. 149, lift every voice and sing. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun, of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat, how good our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that the tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of a bright star is cast. God of the weary years, God of our silent tears, Thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, Thou who hast by Thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met Thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget Thee. Shadowed beneath Thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land. I know the God language could be uncomfortable for some people, but I tend to interpret it mentally however I feel like it. All right. So we're going to do 367. This is a really fun one. Some of you who have Christian backgrounds may remember it from your vacation Bible school days. Alleluia, 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 alleluia. Sing and rejoice. Okay? So the fun part of this is that it's two parts, the Alleluias and the Sing and Rejoice. So you're going to be Alleluias, you're going to be Sing and Rejoice. If you're in the middle, you get to pick. So the fun part is that when you sing your part, you're going to put your hands up in the air, and when it's not your part, you put them down, okay? So I'm going to sing it through one time, 367 in your gray hymnal, 367. So I'm going to sing it through once so you know when your parts are, okay? Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Sing and rejoice. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Sing and rejoice. Hold on, it's tricky. Sing and rejoice. Hallelujah. Sing and rejoice. Hallelujah. Sing and rejoice. Hallelujah. Sing and rejoice. Everybody got it? Okay, here we go. Where's my hallelujahs? Where's my sing and rejoices? Okay, here we go. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Sing and rejoice. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Sing and rejoice. Sing and rejoice. Hallelujah. Sing and rejoice. Hallelujah. Sing and rejoice. Hallelujah. Sing and rejoice. A little quicker now. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Sing and rejoice. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Sing and rejoice. Sing and rejoice. Hallelujah. Sing and rejoice. Hallelujah. Sing and rejoice. Hallelujah. Sing and rejoice.
Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Fayetteville. I am Natalie Emmons. I serve as board treasurer and Web of Life co-lead for this growing, journeying community. We welcome all of you to our service, especially those of you who are searching for a spiritual home. Many of us were once too seeking something larger than ourselves to which we could belong, a sense of rootedness to hold us as we create meaning together. We do that well here, though not perfectly. In this congregation, we strive not for perfection, but for authenticity and connection. Whether it's your first time in worship with us or your 100th time, we hope that you'll find here questions that stretch you, people to befriend you, and liberal religious values that challenge you to join us in loving boldly, living justly, and welcoming radically. We are glad you have chosen to be with us today. Please do not hesitate to ask the greeters or ushers if you have any questions, need hearing assistance, or would like to fill out a visitor card so you can start receiving our weekly newsletter. If you have joys or concerns you wish to share or mark private, you are welcome to fill out a yellow Joys and Concerns card for our minister or caring team. You can find one in the seat back in front of you. There will be a time later in the service for you to bring your card to the altar, or you may leave it in the offertory basket. Facebook listeners are welcome to share their joys and concerns in chat, but please note those will be public. We are a fellowship of action. Upcoming events and activities will be found in the weekly email or on our website, and we will highlight a few at the end of the service. I am delighted to introduce our guest speaker today, Brandon Weston. After hearing about Brandon's books from Tressa, I experienced a serendipitous moment when I learned that he also works at the University of Arkansas. We met up for coffee on campus, and now he's here to share his extensive knowledge about Ozark folklore and healing practices. Brandon has a bachelor's and master's degree in French language and literature. He is a folklorist, spiritual healer, and writer living in the Arkansas Ozarks. He has written several acclaimed books, including Ozark Folk Magic, Plants, Prayers, and Healing, Ozark Mountain Spellbook, and Granny Thornapple's Book of Charms. His books are available at local stores like the Four of Wands, Soot and Sage, Pearl's Book, Shiloh Museum, and Two Friends Books. Brandon is also the owner of Ozark Healing Traditions, a collective of articles, lectures, and workshops focused on traditions of medicine and magic from the Ozark Mountain region. You can learn more at ozarkhealing.com. Brandon comes from a long line of Ozark Hill folk and works hard to keep these traditions alive for generations to come. We are grateful for his efforts to preserve Ozark history and practices, and that he is here to share some of his work with us today. And we will now light our chalice. Oh, sorry, I'll come back for that.
All right, well, I'm very glad to be here, and thank you for inviting me to come speak. I welcome you, and whether you are familiar with these traditions or whether this is the first time you're hearing about the Ozarks, whether this is your forever home or home for now, I welcome you on this Ozark journey with me.
And now we'll light our chalice. So please join me in speaking the words on the screen. Love is the spirit of this community, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and truth, and to help one another. Thus do we covenant together.
So our opening hymn today is "'Tis a Gift to Be Simple." It's number 16 in your gray hymnal. You can rise in body and spirit as you're able or willing, and we'll sing together. We're going to sing it through twice. Tis a gift to be simple, tis a gift to be free, tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn, will be our delight, till by turning we come round right. 'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn, will be our delight, till by turning we come round right.
Morning, everybody. I'm Leanda. Today almost was Stephanie, so Stephanie's not feeling well, so she couldn't be with us today. So our story for all ages today is called Powwow Day. And if you don't know what a powwow is, it's a spiritual tradition that is practiced by many of the Plains tribes, Indians, so not Ozarks, but Ozarks adjacent, kind of, primarily the Ponca and the Omaha. River, wake up, Amber whispers. My eyes open. Today is Powwow Day. Then I remember. no dancing, no jingle dress competition for me, not at this tribal powwow. Wish my hair weren't still so short, I sigh. Mama lays out the moccasins that match my dress. But everyone wants to see you, Amber reminds me. Why? I can't dance like I could before I got sick. But you will dance again, she responds. I stay silent as Daddy drives us to the powwow grounds. I usually savor the scents of sage and sweetgrass, but not today. The breeze prickles my skin. I'm tired already. Daddy arranges our chairs near the family drum. Mama squeezes me close. Doing okay? I nod, but I'm not. I watch my friend Dawn get ready to dance. No, I'm not okay. Then the powwow begins as the MC calls. Time for grand entry. Stand up. Gentlemen, remove your hats. My uncles strike a large drum together. Bam, 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 bam. They sing. Ay-ya, way ay-ya. I make a decision. At least I can dance the grand entry. Are you sure? Amber asks. Yep. Grandpa leads with the eagle staff. Other warriors carry flags into the arena. Bottom, 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 bottom. Elders head up the long line, oldest to youngest, traditional fancy grass and jingle dress. Dawn squeezes my hand as we wait with Amber and the other girls to dance into the arena. My feet stay still. I can't feel the drum's heartbeat. Amber grabs my arm. You okay? She leads me back to our seats. Everyone dances and moves around the circle, all connected to the drum, Mother Earth, and one another. Everyone, Amber, Dawn, our cousins, our friends, everyone but me. I watch through wet eyes. After grand entry, an elder prays that our dances honor the Creator, that our culture and language will stay strong, and that healing will come to those who need it, like me. I rise to join the intertribal dance, but I can't focus. Mama's steady hand guides me into my seat. The drum's heartbeat surrounds me. Bam, 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 bam. I lean against Daddy and watch the competitions. Traditional dancers move and draw me into their story. Fancy dancers twirl and ribbons whirl. Graceful grass dancers sway and weave themselves around the circle. The drum starts its beat inside me. Then the MC calls, girls jingle dress, head to the arena. For a second, my heart leaps. But I can't do the healing dance today, even though I need it. Dawn said she'll dance for me. My heart swells as I see Dawn, my sis, our cousins and friends step and turn, graceful and fast. Their feather fans wave, rows of cones clink, clink, clink on their dresses. I sit up tall as they come close. Judges move around the powwow arena and record scores, but the girls don't dance for the judges. They dance for the Creator, the ancestors, their families, and everyone's health, including mine. Bottom, 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 bottom. I stand, I open my heart. I feel the drum fully now. Then I know I will join them at the next powwow. I will dance again. Oh, okay, also me. Joys and concerns. So this is a time where we share all of our joys and concerns with each other. This is how we celebrate community. We invite you to share your ups and downs as you desire. You can come to the front and drop a stone for any joy or concern. Also, if you filled out one of these cards, bring it to me, or if you're not able to, you can hold it up and somebody will come by and get it. Please mark on there if it's confidential or if you don't mind it to be shared. If you are on Facebook, please type your joys or concerns into the box, but please know that on Facebook we can't control the privacy, so those will all be public. Are there any joys and concerns on Facebook? Oh, you're right. Also drop us down for the joys and concerns that we're not ready or not able to express, and the ones that will happen through the week. This time of year, we have a little bit of a tradition where we have members or friends share kind of their story or their journey of how they got here or why they are grateful for this community. And today, we're going to have a gratitude moment from Enoch England.
Good morning, everyone. I would first like to start off by reminding everyone that we are having our annual pledge drive through December 3rd, so be sure to get those pledges in as soon as you can. My name is Enoch England. I use they or she pronouns, and I have the pleasure this morning to talk about why it is important to me to give to the UUFF. A little over a year ago, my partners and I had just moved from Jonesboro to Fayetteville, leaving behind the family and friends we had made during our college career. Fayetteville was safer, though, especially for us as a queer, neurodivergent polycule. As an autistic person, finding community is hard enough, let alone in a place full of strangers. And yet, I was determined to make sure we would find a place to fit, to actually fit. Growing up Pentecostal and Baptist, I had a community in church, a community that I had disguised myself to fit into, but a community nonetheless. I have always been a spiritual person, but I found that no church could hold the complexities that I came with. That is, until I found you. One Wikipedia article-induced rabbit hole later, and I was here. Home. Somewhere where a pagan and a Muslim can be in love. Where being neurodivergent is celebrated, not corrected. Where queer is not a word of hate, but filled with love and hope. Where people are willing to meet you where you are and learn with you, uplift you, and challenge you. Being part of this community has given me a sense of self and a desire to be part of something greater than myself, to help others, to educate, and to learn. I started just by taking roles in the pagan rituals we hold, attending meetings, and slowly coming to church more and more. Now, on top of that, I give my time to the welcoming committee, I volunteer for events, I bring food for the potlucks, and I manage the library downstairs, which is currently being renovated. And I have pledged what I can to help with the cost of making this community possible. I give because this community has given to me. I give because it takes time and treasure to make this growing community thrive. I give because I know from experience that this community changes lives, and I want nothing more than to pass on all the love and care I have received from you to the next person who walks through those doors and say with joy bursting from my chest, welcome home. Thank you.
Thank you, Enoch. The important work of this fellowship is possible because of generous contributions of time, energy, and money, just like Enoch said. If you are visiting, we do not expect anything from you. You're guests, and we're glad that you're here. If you're a member, this is one way to participate in our work of love, peace, and justice in this community. Every contribution of any size is helpful and appreciated. And as we pass the offering baskets, we invite you to share financially. If you prefer, you can also give online at uufayetteville.org. There's also a text number that you can use, or we still do snail mail. You can mail it to Fawn in the office. Share the plate is today. Thank you, Carol. Today it is, we're going to share our donations with Omni Center for Peace, Justice, and Ecology.
All right. I'm going to try to keep this to 20 minutes, but I tend to be long-winded. So thank you again for having me. So my area of interest and expertise is with Ozark folk magic and healing traditions. And normally when I give an introduction class like this, I take 2 hours. So 20 minutes, I was thinking exactly what I wanted to say for this. And I think that, it's such a big area to cover. I'm not going to try to cover it all in 20 minutes. But what I am going to look at are the foundational pieces, the foundational ideas, beliefs to this tradition, the foundations that we find amongst healers in the folk record as well as amongst modern healers out in the hills and hollers today. And for me, these foundational ideas, these foundational views, these are the things that connect us. These are the things that we can take from this tradition and we can actually bring into whatever tradition we follow. Whether you are, whatever religious tradition, spiritual tradition, whatever it might be. If you're a practitioner yourself, these are the things that we can bring into our lives and better ourselves with. And so for me, these foundational ideas, this is the heart of this tradition. And the tradition itself is an old one. If you are from the Ozarks or you know about the Ozarks, this goes back to the early 1800s, and then from there back to Appalachia, and then from there back to Europe. Along the way, we've picked up a lot of pieces from indigenous people. We've picked up pieces from West African traditions, Central African traditions as well, into this amalgam, beautiful amalgam that we call Ozark traditions today. So the first foundational view, foundational idea that I want to look at is connection. This is where the tradition really begins. And when we talk about connection, we mean the connection between the individual, between the practitioner, between the person that just happens to hold some remedies, the connection that Ozarkers have had to their heritage, to their ancestry, and to the land itself. Amongst the healers that I've worked with and in my own life and my own practice, connection is the foundation, it's the heart from where all of the practices actually come from. It's a connection that the healer has to that flow of divine energy, the connection to God, whatever they happen to call it. It's a connection to community. And I always tell people, I get these questions a lot. What is folk healing? What is folk magic, medicine? And I always tell people, this is the healing of the folk. It's the healing of the people. So healers have traditionally been very, very closely connected to community. This connection to the community is very important. Without the community, the healer wouldn't exist. Without the healer, the community would have no one to go to, when they needed healing. And by the way, healers can take a lot of different forms. Traditionally, we had healers like power doctors who worked with charms and prayers. We had granny women who were predominantly midwives, but who, by the way, carried the healing for the entire community, although they were often just in the folk record called simple midwives. And we also had yarb doctors. These were healers that worked with plants, or yarbs, which is the Ozark dialect word for a healing plant. So healers take a lot of different forms. Healers can also include just individuals who have picked up home remedies and prayers and charms that they help their families with, that they help their communities with. But at the heart of all of this is connection, is a connection between the individual and themselves, a connection between the individual and the community around them. This connection extends to what I like to call the flow. And one of my teachers actually gave me a very, very good metaphor, a very good image for this flow. And this is the idea that there is a flow of somethingness in all that we see around us. And traditional Ozarkers might have called that God. Non-traditional Ozarkers might call it a lot of different things. Spirit, energy, the force, maybe. But it's this innate flow that exists within all things. And even amongst the traditional Ozarkers, there's this idea that people are not separate from nature and people are not separate from people, that there is this flow through all things. And so one of my teachers gave me a very good image, especially, when we're talking about healing practices. As a healer, the purpose of the healer is to lay back into this flow and let this flow of nature carry them. The easiest way to get downriver is to flow with the current. And flowing with the current means connecting, again, going back to connection, connecting to the flow of nature, whether that means working seasonally with seasonal practices, working with the land, how the land grows. So we know when we're gathering herbs and medicinal plants, gathering them at certain times of the year to ensure that the plants extend and further grow. So this flow of nature, rather than working against it, we work with it. We go with the flow. And so this is the go with the flow idea might seem modern, but it's not. It's really not. And this is very important. And even amongst the big T, capital T traditionalists, this flow exists. One of my favorite teachers was very, what we would call conservative Christian. But she still had this idea of flow, and she said that she worked in her practice as a healer. She worked only as God allowed her to work, when God allowed her to work. And it's the same idea of we work only when nature allows us to work in the way that nature allows us to work. Connecting again to this idea of flow, we look at our perspective. We look at how our perspective changes the way that we work. So amongst Ozark healers in particular, we connect to the microcosm and the macrocosm. And so the microcosm's on the individual level, the macrocosm is on the big picture level. We understand that the microcosm, the individual, is represented in the big picture, and the big picture is also represented within the individual themselves. Traditionally, Ozark healers have not separated healing the body or the physical body and healing the spirit or healing the mind. These things traditionally have not been separated. It's a very modern thing to separate these out. And modern healers today are working to help connect these things back together. But traditionally, healers had this perspective of their client, their patient, whoever they were working with, this idea that the community is sick when the individual is sick, and the individual becomes sick when the community is sick. This idea of working on the microcosm level within the body, within the home, as a way of connecting the duality of physicality of the material and the spiritual. So one way that healers would do this traditionally, and this is a thing I always encourage modern healers to do, is working one-on-one with the people, the patients that they were working with. So what does that mean? That means traditionally healers would live with their patients. So they would move in if their patient was ill, and they would stay as long as the person was sick. They would help out around the house. They would take care of the kids. They would, make sure they had breakfast and got off to school while the person was allowed to heal, allowed to engage within their own healing process. And this is something that we've lost today. We see it within families. You want to help your loved one, and so, you may take over their chores or, clean up the room around them, things like that. But I always encourage, this is a community endeavor, the healing process, and no matter if your community is just you and your family, or whether that extends out into church groups or into neighborhoods, whatever it might be. But there's a lot to be said in these older healing traditions. There's a lot that we can actually take and bring into the modern world to help with that healing process. So the idea of focusing on the small, the microcosm, focusing on the body as a way of healing the community itself. You're not just healing a person with a fever. You're healing that person, you're healing their home, you're healing their family, you're healing their neighbors, you're healing their friend groups, all of this. And in a little way, we're healing our world as well. This microcosm and macrocosm also is demonstrated in Ozarkers' often obsession with astrological phases and working with the signs of the moon and the signs of other celestial bodies. And if you don't believe me, just buy a Farmer's Almanac. Just go to the store, buy a Farmer's Almanac, find the best days section, and you will understand all of this. This has been a big part of our lives, the best days to cut your hair, to make fences, to wean a child, to have a child. All of these things were once determined by the moon phases and by the zodiac signs. And for those of us in the modern world who sort of equate this immediately with magic, I have met, too many to count, very Christian, rural farmers who work in this way and swear by it. But it makes sense once you know this idea of the macrocosm, the big picture, and the microcosm. This idea that, if there is a creator or if there is a God, then all of these things are a part of this creation. And so, using the zodiac signs, the moon phases, is just like going out and gathering a plant or, making a medicine. It's all the same nature. It's all the same flow. And so traditionally, Ozark healers would work within these processes, within these cycles, all the while understanding that within these cycles, within these big wheels and these small wheels inside of each other, there was only this one flow through all of this process. And this one flow manifests in lots of different ways. And by engaging with the microcosm, with the things that we can understand, by engaging with our families, by engaging with this healing process, we can dip our toe into that flow. And then maybe we can go a little bit deeper and we can actually, the healing that we're doing here, we can bring to other people as well. All of this goes back to this idea of connection. Ozark folk healing has also really connected to this idea of simplicity. And, I get asked a lot from people who know nothing about this tradition, if you had to define, what does Ozark folk healing, folk magic look like? And I always tell people, well, if you're working with healers, traditional healers, you probably won't see anything at all. You probably won't even know that they're doing anything. It's this idea of simplicity, this idea that practices are on the inside, not necessarily always on the outside. The amount of people that I have talked to who, swear that their family have no folk healing traditions, then we get a little deeper and I say, well, did your grandma have a Bible that she, wrote names in, like a prayer list or something like that? Well, yeah, that was just something grandma did. That is folk magic. That is folk healing. That's what we're talking about. So, and I have found cookbooks, I found recipe cards with remedies written in the margins. I always tell people, every family has this connection because at one point, this connection was so vital to our communities that to not have it would mean not to survive. And so all of our families come from this place of the folk. We are still the folk today, even though, we go to the doctor and we get medications, things like that. We are still connected to this idea of the flow. We are still connected to this community. So these practices have not died out. They have just evolved. They've incorporated in new things. They've incorporated in new people. All the while connecting back to the flow and connecting to this idea of simplicity. Most of the healers that I worked with, it took a long time to actually get them to open up. And at the time, really eager for collecting these practices. I come from an Ozark family, but again, I didn't know that my family had this weird stuff there until I started delving into it. And I discovered, for instance, I have a great uncle who was a wart charmer, which means he could buy warts off of people. He was also a blood stopper. He could stop a bleeding wound with certain words. And he also planted by the phases of the moon, all of which came out after I wrote my first book and claimed I didn't have any of this in my family. And so all of this came out. And so we have this idea of simplicity. The healers that I worked with, once we started talking about these practices, I didn't really understand it at the time. Now, as a practitioner myself, I get it, to where you get so ingrained, the practices become a culture, and you don't think that there's anything in it. You don't think that there's anything worth sharing, when actually, coming from the outside, there's a lot of stuff there. This simplicity, though, isn't because the practices themselves are simplistic. A lot of the times, underneath the silence, there is a lot internally that's going on. There may be very lengthy prayers and verbal charms that are recited by memory. I've met healers who had upwards of 100 different verbal charms memorized. This all goes back to our simpler beginnings as Ozarkers, where the majority of people couldn't read and write. And so the practices that you had to be passed down by word of mouth, had to be passed down from one practitioner to another. And so underneath this sort of outward silence, again, going back to that idea of the flow, there's something underneath there. And so, I always tell people, don't write off home remedies. Home remedies are great. Collect them. If you have Ozark ancestors or people that are still alive, collect these things from them before they're gone. Simplicity is reflected also in the idea of repurposing, the idea of connecting to the land. Originally, traditionally, and even today, Ozark healers would work with what they had on hand, what they could gather off the land, or what they could grow. What they had on hand meant sometimes things got repurposed around the house, like taking a broom, an ordinary broom, and sweeping a person's body. Because as you sweep a house clean, surely you can sweep illness off of a person with a broom. Or using a knife or an axe to symbolically sever the cord between a person and somebody who has hexed them or put a curse on them. Repurposing eggs as containers, or potatoes or onions to suck illness out of a person's body and then destroy it. The idea of what can be repurposed from the land. This is another area where I've met healers who had hundreds and hundreds of plants memorized and could go out and knew exactly how to prepare them. So using what was on hand, using what could be repurposed, this comes from a very simple origin of needing those things. You can't necessarily just go out and buy what you want or buy what you might need. But this also goes back to this idea of connection, this idea of flow, the healer connecting to their own gift to be able to not only hold these things in their mind, but being able to engage with the landscape and engage with all of these invisible processes in a meaningful way, being able to go and take, what they need and bring it back, and know that they had done that responsibly, so that, for instance, plants could continue on and continue to grow. So this simplicity dominates everything. This flow goes through everything in the Ozark tradition. And there, really, when you look at it, when you talk to healers, when you interact with healers, when you are healed yourself by healers, there is not anything that they do that isn't touched by this flow, by this connection. And that is really at the heart of all of these practices and all of these folk beliefs. And this is really what we can take into our own lives today. This idea of connecting to this place, connecting to the place that we happen to just have fallen into. Or in the case of my ancestors, my ancestors came here because other people were displaced from their home. Other people were removed from their home. And so what does it mean to be a person on this land, connecting to this land, connecting to the things that grow on this land? What does it mean to be a healer or somebody that just happens to collect some folk remedies? What does it mean for us to be able to engage with this process without neglecting and without forgetting our past as well? And so we're all here. We're on this land, however we got here, this is where we are. And so, engaging with some of these Ozark traditions, for me, has been a way for me to not only connect with my ancestors, but also to be able to connect with the land and really honor the land that we're on. So I know that was a quick run through of some foundational practices, but I hope that this maybe piqued some interest. And if you are interested in learning more, I do have a website, ozarkhealing.com, where I have classes and a bunch of other information. And so, if you are here in the Ozarks, I recommend you looking into some of this stuff. Thank you for having me.
Our closing hymn today that was wonderful, by the way. As someone with Appalachian heritage moving to the Ozarks, finding the similarities was really, really comforting. Our hymn is number 18 in your gray hymnal, What Wondrous Love. Please rise in body and spirit as you're willing and able. We're going to sing together. Beautiful. Thank you.
Please join us in speaking the words on the screen as we extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
And Brandon is going to give us our closing words.
My hope with this talk was to help you connect deeper with your own spiritual journey and connect to this land and however that looks. And I have to also encourage everyone, again, to go and talk to their elders, to talk to each other, to talk to your community, and to help collect stories and traditions, not just in an academic way, but in a hands-on way, so that all of this can perpetuate and you can actually use it in the community, and these traditions will live on. Thank you.